Hello, wildlings. I'm your Creepsmith, and you found my Fear Forge. Lucky you. Welcome back, wildlings. Have you ever had something that you loved to do, somewhere that you loved to go, and then, for whatever reason, you just simply can't anymore? Well, tonight's story is a little bit like that, only for the worst possible reasons. Tonight's story, from Reddit's No Sleep, The Living Sands, by Alex Ross Writer. A few years ago, I lived just 2 houses up from the ocean, so I spent most every evening after work and most of my weekends on the water or in the water, swimming, surfing, or else on a towel on the sand, enjoying a beer and the sunset. I could think of little better than simply being there, going there without a plan and seeing who was there to make a day with. It was one such Saturday afternoon when I found myself on the beach with a group of friends. We were surfing for hours. It was great. I surfed a few excellent waves when one of us, we'll call him Ben, saw a shark in the water, a big gray one, showing itself for a moment, then slipping back beneath the waves where we couldn't see it. At that, we all paddled our way back to shore, swimming slowly, methodically, until we were waist deep and able to walk. I had a cooler full of sandwiches waiting for us, roast beef with horseradish sauce and extra tomatoes. That was for me. I had a few bites and then set it down on the sand to go set up a speaker and put on some music. And when I came back, my sandwich was gone. That was odd. There was no one on the beach besides us, and my friends wouldn't have taken it. Was it a bird? But then I looked up. There were no birds nearby, and none of the farther ones out were carrying it. Maybe it had gone off behind a dune, or maybe there was some kind of animal. But no. The dunes were dozens of meters away, way too far, and no animals at all. I found it very odd, disconcerting even. I remember I looked where I had put it down, looking for any disturbances in the sand or an imprint or something, but the sand was normal. If anything, it was smooth, maybe even too smooth. I looked over at a gal that we'd started hanging out with recently. Her name was Jackie. I asked her if she'd seen what the hell had happened, and she said no. What was I even talking about? I told her, it was my bloody sandwich, and now it's missing. She looked at me like I was an alien at that. I suppose I can't blame her either, but then I recovered, at least I think I did, by making a lame joke and swigging a beer. I let the whole incident go for the most part, put it out of my mind as best I could. But even then, I found myself wondering just what the hell had actually happened, and how in the hell had it happened. It was a week or two later. I was with a similar group at the same beach not far from where we'd made our spread earlier. This time, it was late at night with the wind howling and the moon low and blue over the ocean. We were all bundled up, even as Ben lit a little bonfire with scraps of wood that we'd recovered from the beach. In moments there was this crackling blaze, and we were all huddled close to it, the wind biting at our faces and hands even as we fed the fire, stoking it to a dull roar. Now there was something out there in the darkness skittering across the sand. It was a crab. Jackie pointed it out. She thought that it was even cute, but it seemed spooked, terrified, like it was running away from something. And while it apparently recognized us as dangers and kept away from us, it seemed to have no fear whatsoever of the heat of the fire. I mean, the damn thing was almost running right up into the flames. Jackie tried to stop it and shoo it away from the blaze, but it darted around her and tried to get closer to the fire, so I got up and blocked its path, and off it went, back into the darkness. It disappeared beyond a little ripple in the sand, and, that was all. It disappeared. And then I saw there was no more ripple in the sand. It had vanished into the sand itself. I took out my phone and turned on the light. Where the crab had vanished, the sand again was pristine, flat, almost manicured. There was no ripple at all, no miniature dune in it whatsoever. It had vanished into thin air, or into the sand itself. I looked closer. Had it hidden itself, maybe burrowed down into the sand, staring up at me even now? I began to dig for it, scraping through the sand, but there was nothing there, nothing at all. Again, I let the matter go. At this point, I didn't know what to think. Were there sinkholes? An optical illusion of some sort? Maybe it was a glitch in the Matrix. I couldn't know. So again, I put it out of my mind as well as I could, and I got on with my life. Fast forward another week. I was with Jackie walking along the beach with her little Yorkie. You could call it a date, but we didn't. We were just friends, just talking and laughing. And if we weren't just friends, it could definitely be a date. Just me and Jackie and her Yorkie. But the little guy seemed scared, on edge. A few times I noticed that it was walking funny, almost limping, and yanking its foot up from the sand and looking back at the beach, terrified. I noticed that and I wondered. Wordless, shapeless thoughts began to form, and fearing the worst, I picked the little dog up, trying to keep it from those tiny, barely visible ripples in the sand. Well, at least I tried to pick it up. The moment I got my hands on it, the Yorkie panicked, squirmed around, yipping and thrashing, and I dropped it. Little guy darted off behind a dune in the sand. Jackie and I chased after it, and it was gone. It had gone over the dune, and it had simply gone. There was no grass, no other dunes, not for hundreds of yards, nothing, nowhere the tiny little dog could have hidden. It was just the beach, just the sand. Except there was one part of the sand that was smooth and far too flat, like it had been raked over and smoothed out to hide something. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw a bubble in the sand, like escaping air, like the final desperate gasp of something. I went to dig at it, but even a foot down, there was nothing, just loose, dry, shapeless sand. We got the word out, of course, talked to people about the missing dog, put up signs, went to the police, posted online, and all of that. And we did get a few calls, but I can confidently say that Jackie's little Yorkie was never seen again. By now, I couldn't stand the beach any longer. I couldn't stand the sight of it or the smell. And the idea of being there, on the sand, terrified me. And yet in my horror, I noticed a few things about whatever was going on. Whatever it was, whatever demon, whatever aberration, it only seemed to exist in dry sand. Grass or wet sand kept it at bay. Everything that had vanished, my sandwich, the crab, Jackie's little Yorkshire, they'd all been on dry sand. So perhaps grass or the thickness of wet sand could be safe. Even so, I wasn't taking my chances, and I knew better than to tell anyone. I mean, can you imagine? Hey blokes, I think there's a demon living in the sand. In just a matter of weeks, it's graduated from eating sandwiches to crabs to Jackie's poor little missing Yorkie. No, that would never work. I left the matter be, and when everyone wanted to go surfing or what have you, I just told them no, I was scared of the sharks. I made up some cock and bull tale about one getting too close to me and seeing that merciless black eye turn to white as it made to bump me. That was convincing enough, or I thought it was. But one evening, Saturday evening, I got a call. They were out and about, and they were at a popular bar that had a patio overlooking the beach. They were a few drinks in, and they said they missed me. So I thought, what the hell? And 15 minutes later, I was dressed up and taking shots together with my friends again. It was a great evening. Ridiculous stories were told. Lifelong memories were made. By midnight, we'd all gotten so wasted, and it was time to take a cab, or in my case, a stumble, back home. We gathered at the front bar, but then I noticed Ben was gone. Where the hell was he? I asked, and it was Jackie who said that he'd gone to take a piss. I laughed and made some joke about it, but she clarified that he had gone down to the beach among the dunes to take a piss. And I felt my blood run cold. I made another joke, or tried to, and said, well, let's wait here until he comes back. And, he didn't come back. Not after 5 minutes, or 10, or 15. I played it as cool as I could before I grabbed a few others and set out to search over the sands. In moments, we found his footprints, deep and recent in the wet sand. Thank God, I thought. Maybe if he stayed on the wet sand, maybe if he went to the grassy dunes, well, maybe he just passed out. But then I saw that his footprints left the wet sand and entered the dry. There was a little stream, an estuary that ran to the ocean, but his footsteps stopped just a few meters from it and vanished. Immediately, instantly, totally vanished. We called the cops, and then we called the Coast Guard, and in around an hour, volunteers were all over the beach combing every inch of it for a sign of Ben. The whole place was lit up. There were helicopters patrolling the water, several boats, but there was nothing. Not a sight, not an article of clothing, not a single, that's too horrible, body part, even. The only thing anyone could think was, at a point, the helicopter caught a view of the fin of a shark. Bloody fucking big one, too. A shark that big, so close to the surface of the water at that time of night? I mean, supposing Ben got confused or maybe fell into the estuary or something and was washed out to sea. Even if the shark didn't get him, the ocean itself, well, could have. They kept up the search for a day or two, no more, and then Ben was considered missing. Gone, but not forgotten, they said at his funeral. That was accurate, I thought to myself, gone but not forgotten. My friends and I, we promised that no matter what happened, we would never forget Ben. We toasted to that. And as we did, I told myself, I'm not just not going to forget Ben. I'm going to avenge him. I made a show of it, stumbling around the bar, swigging beer after beer, taking shot after shot. I could feel it watching me. Something was watching me. There were ripples in the sand here and there. I could see them just at the periphery of my vision. It was watching. It was waiting, and it was hungry. It was just before dusk when I made my little show, carrying my beer, spilling it, stumbling into the sand. I was careful, though. I kept to the wet sand and the grass, and although I saw a few ripples and perhaps felt a dull, threatening vibration, I was left be. At least for the moment, I was left be. I stumbled to where Ben's footsteps ended. Closer and closer. For weeks now, the beach had been deserted, and as news of Ben's vanishing spread, people seemed sad or horrified, and since no one was sure how it had happened to such a strong swimmer and a surfer like him, no one was keen on getting back into the water. So I knew that I was the only one in weeks to wander out onto that sand alone like that. So yes, I made a show of it. I tugged my pants down to take a piss, threw the empty beer can into the sand, and in the corner of my eye, I saw it vanish below, and then reappear as if it had been coughed back out. It was there, and it was smart. But it wasn't so bloody smart as to be able to read that the beer that I was drinking wasn't real beer. It wasn't alcoholic. So I stumbled out of the wet sand and onto the dry, just next to that pretty little estuary that flowed to the ocean. And then I felt something smooth, something strong wrapping around my ankle. I waited for a second and then dove into the water and began to swim for the ocean. It didn't let go. It wasn't letting go. I swam and I got into the water, and then it pulled back into the sand. I could barely keep my head out, and I tried to scream for help, precious breath gone. I was still underwater. I clutched at the sand and kept my head in the water, and then with this Herculean effort, I managed to pull the rest of my body out into the water. My foot, something was cutting my foot, but I kicked free of it and swam into the estuary, and it swam out after me. I made for the ocean as quick as I could. The current caught me and flushed me into the wave, and then I gasped a breath of air and turned to face my foe. It was a bizarre, shapeless mass, sand in color and huge like some overgrown mollusk or worm. It writhed horribly, squirming awkwardly, but it was strong, and it turned, and as it turned, it could see me. Its mouth, or one of its mouths, gaped open with a ravenous hunger, and as quick as I could, I swam out further into the sea. My plan was simple. I would lure the thing into the ocean and let the current carry it out where it would drown. I hoped. I got to the rip current and trod water, splashing to taunt it, and it began to writhe towards me. All right, closer. Little closer, just a little closer, and the current caught it. And so I swam away lateral to the beach as the damn thing drifted past me, but then I turned again. It flailed horribly, but it somehow managed to stop, and it managed to follow, to chase me. Fuck. I had to change tactics, and I had to decide, swim for the beach, and it'd get to its home in the sand and pull me under, eat me alive. Swim farther into the ocean, and it'd be a contest of strength and endurance, and that was if the shark didn't get me. Oh. The shark. I saw its fin cutting through the surface, and below I saw its body, massive and torpedo-like, swimming towards me, mouth full of razor-sharp serrated teeth, and then it brushed me aside, hard enough to spin me around as it swam up to the sand creature. The creature saw the shark coming for it. It seemed to panic and turn, but that shark was fast, and it caught it easily. Its jaws gripped hold and it shook, cutting off chunks of muscular flesh, tearing it to shreds. The creature tried to fight back and, I guess, bite the shark, but it couldn't penetrate the shark's armored scales. In seconds, the shark was in a feeding frenzy. It caught scent of the blood and its black eyes rolled back, and they were white and blind. There was so much blood in the water, and in moments the creature, whatever it was in separate twitching pieces. I was staring, I realized, treading water and staring. The shark spat out chunks of flesh, and maybe the flavor didn't agree with it, and then it turned to face me. For a moment I thought that was it. I had succeeded in my mission, but now I would pay the price for it. I prepared for death as best I could, but then the shark approached me, its eyes black again. It got right up to me, right next to me, staring at me with its lidless black eye. Then its eye went white, then back to black. In a stupor, I turned and watched as it swam away into the open ocean, and I remembered myself. I watched as the separated chunks of the sand creature, or whatever it was, whatever it had been, sank slowly to the bottom of the ocean. Then I turned and swam back parallel to the beach until I was out of the rip current and made my way back to the sand. It was only then that I allowed myself to reflect that the story of how I avenged Ben's death, the most unlikely and unbelievable part of it, wasn't the nature of the sand creature itself or how I lured it out into the ocean to be ripped to pieces by a great white shark. The most fantastic, incredible portion of this whole story is that after that shark did its thing, it turned to me, looked at me, and then it winked at me. Okay, so today we're going to have an after-story opinion poll. What do you think is scarier, smart sharks or honest-to-goodness sandworms? I'll figure it out later. Until then, stay scary, my wildlings, and make the most of your nights.